Your colleague just gave you harsh feedback in front of the team. Or they completely ignored the guidelines you spent weeks creating. Or they missed another deadline. Your immediate reaction might be anger or defensiveness. And those comes from certainty that they are either incompetent or actively trying to undermine you. In other words, they're doing something because that's who they are. This reaction is normal, and it might even be the case sometimes. However, it's also destroying your ability to actually solve the problem. And in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you why we overreact to these situations, how to shift your perspective before you respond, and what to do instead that actually improves outcomes. I'm Greg, co-founder of Bismart Communication Studio, and for 10 years, I've coached leaders through difficult workspace situations, and I've seen how same psychological trap derails tons of conversations and relationships. My goal is to share my experience and techniques that we use to close those communication gaps. So if you like to hear proven, science-based communication advice every week, hit subscribe. With that said, let's dive in. The cognitive trap that's sabotaging your conversations is called Fundamental Attribution Error. In short, here's how it works. When others fail or make mistakes, we attribute this to their personal traits, their character flaws, their laziness, their incompetence. And when we fail or make mistakes, we attribute it to external factors, objective obstacles, system problems, and circumstances that are beyond of our control. Your colleague misses a deadline, they're irresponsible and unreliable. You miss a deadline, the timeline wasn't realistic, the system didn't let me to do that, or 3 urgent things just hit me at once. They give you harsh feedback. They're aggressive and confrontational by nature. You give harsh feedback. I was under pressure, the stakes were high, and anyone would do the same thing would have been on my place. See the pattern? Their behavior reveals their character. Our behavior reveals our circumstances. And this isn't malicious. It is how our brain works. It is hard for us to always analyze every possible aspect of the situation. So we simplify, learn to make our judgment quicker, and we use stereotypes to offload our brain from extra cognitive load. So we fill in the gaps by assuming it's just who they are. And the assumption like that, of course, kills the conversation before it even starts. The technique that counters this is what we call presumption of the best interest, almost like the presumption of innocence. Instead of making a judgment right away, actively search for a constructive motive behind the behavior of your counterpart. Let me show you what it looks like with a concrete example. Imagine your colleague's work doesn't follow the guidelines you established. Your immediate thought, your immediate reaction, they're ignoring instructions, they don't respect my authority, and this is the fundamental attribution error in action. Exactly that. So you're attributing their behavior to character trait that they have. They disrespect you, they're careless, they're insubordinate. But now you can apply presumption of the best interest to this situation and see what are the possible constructive explanations to those actions. Option 1, they made an honest mistake, they tried their best, but they didn't see the guideline or they misunderstood it, for example. Option 2, they decided that in this particular case, diverging from the guideline was more efficient. Maybe there was a unique client request. Maybe the guideline felt outdated at the time or for this specific situation. Maybe they saw something you missed during the preparation of this guideline. And option 3, they are dealing with competing priorities or constraints that you're not aware of, and maybe following the guideline would have derailed or delayed something more urgent or more critical to the whole operation. When you frame it this way, your entire approach and your attitude changes completely. Instead of confronting them about insubordination or being disrespectful, you now can be genuinely interested about their reasoning. And because you have options and those options are making them a better person in your head, it's easier for you to have this conversation. And here's a critical point. Presumption of the best interest doesn't mean being naive. Some people sometimes really do have bad intentions. Sometimes they really are acting selfishly or carelessly. But most of the time, people are doing their best. It just doesn't always look like that from where you're at. And here's the practical benefit. If you are wrong about their behavior and their motives, even if they did have bad intentions, approaching with presumed best interest still gives you better outcomes. You can always escalate later if you need to, but you cannot walk back and you cannot de-escalate that easily from the aggressive or confrontational opening. So now, once you've adjusted your mental model using the presumption of the best interest, you need to actually have the conversation. So let's not mess it up. After you reframed your thinking, do not immediately launch into feedback or correction. That way, you will skip the most important step, understanding the full context. This is where questions become really powerful. Going back to our example, instead of opening with, "You didn't follow the guideline and here's why this is a problem," you can ask, "I noticed you approached this task differently from our usual process. Can you walk me through your thinking or tell me more what led to that decision that you've made?" And notice what this question does. First, it gives you information you don't have about obstacles or circumstances or systems you aren't aware of. Second, it makes the other person feel heard instead of attacked. And when someone feels heard, they're much more open to feedback afterward. And third, it can reveal the real problem. Maybe it's not about following guidelines at all. Maybe it's about unclear communication about expectations or too complicated system. Just one thing. Never, please, never open with why question, because you will usually get pretty emotional response for that. So the pattern is simple. Before you give feedback, ask questions to understand the full picture. You might discover the problem that isn't what you thought. Or you might confirm your concern and now have the full context to address the issue. Either way, you are in a better position than if you would lead with just your assumptions. And here's the full framework. When you get frustrated with someone's actions or behaviors at work, do those 4 steps. Step 1, recognize the fundamental attribution error because your brain is filling in negative intent and it's sometimes doing that where you don't have full information. Step 2, apply presumption of the best interest, so actively search for constructive motive behind the behavior of the person you're talking to. Then step 3, ask questions before giving feedback. Get the full context, understand their reasoning, and often you will discover the real issue. And then step 4, once you understand the situation, give clear and constructive feedback. And if you want to know how to do that 4th step well, how to give feedback that is direct, helpful, and doesn't rely on the broken sheet sandwich approach, I've got another video that breaks down exactly how to do that. Link in the description. The goal here isn't to become endlessly patient or never address problems. The goal is to approach these situations from a place that actually leads to improvement instead of just venting your frustration. And this is it. If this was helpful, subscribe for more evidence-based communication tools every week and hit the like button. Also, share your workplace stories about difficult conversations that you had in the comments, and I would love to hear more about what you are dealing with. Good luck having those tough conversations without anger, and see you next week.